When a horse feels like they can't find the answer, they start to want to stop trying. They either want to give up, or they get frustrated, or they want to fight, or they just want to leave. And it's the same with people. Like, very few people can be consistently asked a question and not understand the answer and keep trying to find the answer.
Welcome back to another bonus episode of No Stupid Questions from the Dear Horse World podcast. In this series, we explore all the burning equestrian questions you've always wanted to ask. Because, let's face it, there's no such thing as a stupid question in the horse world. This week, I'm joined by Maynard, a trainer, author, and all-around horseman whose approach to horsemanship is as inspiring as it is practical. Whether you know him from his competition days, his best-selling book, In the Middle Are the Horsemen, or his incredible courses on NF+, Tick blends elite competition skills with a relationship-first approach to training. We'll be diving into his unique training philosophies, sharing insights on building better partnerships with our horses, and, of course, tackling some of your incredible questions from the community. This episode might sound and look a little different, by the way, as we had the amazing opportunity to film this podcast episode live from Equine Affaire in Springfield, Massachusetts. Okay, Horse World, let's dive in. Tick, welcome to the No Stupid Questions bonus episode of Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Before we start, we're going to let everyone know we're here at Equine Affaire in Springfield, Massachusetts, and we're doing a live podcast, which is pretty cool. We're in the NF+ booth, and we have a basket here for everyone who's listening and not watching. We've got a basket of questions given by our members, our NF+ members. And the preface behind the concept is people get the opportunity to feel sort of free and supported to ask whatever question, that there literally is no stupid questions.
I love it.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just kind of maybe dive in then.
All right.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's jump right in.
I'll do the first one. Okay. Do you have any advice for encouraging suppleness and relaxation while lunging or sending? Specifically for upwards transitions into the canter and a horse that goes around counterbent to the outside. There is no brace on the line, and he often will relax and release in motion. He draws very well and will hook onto me, but it would be super helpful for me to understand some good practices for suppling the horse to bend to the inside while he's going around.
So what I'm picturing here in my mind is a horse that's trotting around. It sounds like the horse isn't carrying a lot of tension, maybe a little bit, but she said the horse does draw well and can take a deep breath, but the horse is trotting around and the horse's head, his head is to the outside. And what we're wanting him to sort of bend around us in a little bit of a kind of like a C shape from nose to tail, and to look in a little bit more rather than looking out. And I guess there's two main ways you could go about accomplishing this. One of them is physically trying to manipulate the situation and the horse in order to have them be physically bent in. You know, you could, for example, pull more on the rope or have some kind of attachment that physically bends them to the inside. And the other thing you could do is you could work on using your intention or your flag or your stick to step towards the girth so that the girth moves away from you, and then they sort of bend like a banana around you. Sort of like when you're riding, you put your inside leg on and then they bend around it and you get the inside bend. So one way is the sort of physical way of doing it, which I think probably has a time and a place. I think the much more artistic way or big picture way or more helpful way, really, is to try to get them to want to look in more, right? Where they start thinking that what's inside of the circle, which would be the person or the person that asked this question, if I'm working with a horse, how can I get them to look in as if I'm either the most important or most interesting thing in that horse's world, like not something on the outside of the arena or the outside of the circle or the outside of the round pen, but how can I get them to look into me? And that's what we call draw, really. And the draw is like a magnetism. It's like if you separate a mare and a foal, you feel like you can almost like it's like stretching two magnets apart where they're still like drawn to each other and they want to get back to each other. And she said her horse has some draw, so I think that's a really good starting point. I wouldn't say that having draw is like a yes or no question, like a horse has draw or doesn't. It's sort of like, how much do you have and in what situations and how far can you stretch it, almost like an elastic band. So I would say that's what I would probably work on is creating that draw. And at the same time, creating little sort of skills and habits with your relationship with that horse, where they start to kind of get used to turning that corner back towards you. So when you're circling a horse and they're at liberty, they have to have this feeling, otherwise they would just drift off, right? And so you have this feeling of like you want to send the horse away without them leaving you, and you want to draw them in, but say, not all the way to me. Now, when you're first starting it, what you do is you actually do say all the way to me. You say, do a quarter circle and then come to me. And then do half a circle and then come to me. And now just those 2 steps, do quarter circle and then come to me at the walk, that might take a few days. That might take 3 or 4 sessions, if not more with some horses, And then do half a circle and then come to me. And then do 3/4 circle and then come to me. And then by the time you're doing a full circle where they can be like looking at you, like ready to come to you, and they're sort of bent inside and you've got that draw even at the walk on a 10-meter circle, that could take a few weeks. And, if you don't go in those little steps, that's when you sort of get to the point where they're already trotting and cantering, they're on a 20-meter circle, they're on the end of a lunge line, and inevitably then you're going to have to use the first method, which is some kind of control to get them to physically bend to the inside. So you could do that, and I think you might get a little suppleness out of your horse, but what I would recommend is backing up, doing it at the walk, starting with a quarter circle, and when they do get to you, you want to make that a great feeling for them. So whatever your horse likes, you give them a rub, you give them a break. Some horses you give them a treat, you give them a cookie, you spend time with them, you scratch that itch that they didn't know they had.
It sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, like the approach you're suggesting is more mental.
Correct.
So you're
exactly.
You're rewarding, you're asking for the mind to bend first before the body.
Yes. Now you can look at it that way. Some people like to break it up into the horse has 3 parts: the physical part, the mind part, which is like, do they understand, like the kind of the ABCs of it? Do they mentally understand what's next? And then there's the emotional part, which is, I think in this case, also especially important because you want them to have sort of a warm feeling from you. Imagine you've got a good friend that you haven't seen in a long time, and you are maybe hanging out the Equine Affaire with them, and you're like looking forward to like having coffee in the morning. You're looking forward to sitting here and chatting with them, and you like get like a warm feeling, and that's what you want the horse to have. So you've got to kind of have that warmth about you where they're wanting to draw in and be with you.
It feels like an opportunity to maybe take a few steps back, which is always really actually helpful in training.
But super challenging for a lot of people, mentally, including myself.
Totally. Me too. Okay, that's awesome. I really like the mental, emotional, and physical element of it because I think we underestimate the impact that the emotional and the mental has on the horse's ability to do something physically.
Yes. Yeah. And it can work the other way too. If a horse is always doing something, riding or lunging, and they're off balance.
Yes.
That's not a nice feeling for a horse. Like imagine like being on ice and you're like feeling like you're not sure about your footing, or you're skiing and you're not a good skier and you're a little out of control and you're feeling off balance. It's not a great feeling. So it doesn't set you up to have that understanding and that warmth and be in a thinking place. So having a horse be in a good balance physically.
Yes.
They work off each other.
I actually have a question to add to this.
Oh, good.
So something that really blew my mind recently was horses, unlike humans, they don't have arms to balance themselves. Yeah. So their neck and the head is actually like a cantilever for their balance. Yeah. Which is interesting because we're often manipulating the neck, right? And so we don't think, sometimes a lot of us, including myself, we're not really mentored to think about the balance of the horse in the body, and that the self-carriage is a result. And this is something that really recently been diving into. So if a horse is maybe counterbending on a lunge line, for example, like that, would that indicate that potentially there's a balance issue that could be also addressed, that maybe there's like a core strength, or maybe
definitely,
right?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many different things that can interact with each other. It could be sore, it could be arthritic, it could be the balance, it could be the speed is too fast. There's so many different things. But I think to give people a visual of what you're talking about, if I am walking along like a curb, or like like I'm standing on a fence, or like a balance beam, like a gymnast, and I'm not experienced at that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my arms out to the side. That's going to help me get my balance. As I get more practiced, as I get more fit, my balance gets better, and I become a more advanced gymnast or tightrope walker or whatever it is, I could do it with my arms at my side. Right? And that's the same thing with a horse. You know, as they're learning certain things, they're going to want to raise their head to catch their balance. So if you're riding downhill too fast, one of the first things they're going to do is raise their head for their balance. But as they get stronger, fitter, better core, they're going to be able to keep their head in what we would think of as more a dressage position.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important aspect to highlight when we're talking about, because we get really focused on the visual and the aesthetic of where horses hold their heads.
Yes.
And I know that I'll name that when I've been riding in the past and my horse has their head up or to the side or whatever, I feel like the interpretation of anyone watching me is, oh, that, you know, that horse is in collection or in contact, so she must not know what she's doing. And that's obviously my like critical inner voice there. But I think it's really important, as I understand biomechanics better, to know that actually that horse might not have any, like, not that it might have nothing to do with me, because I think every aspect under saddle, there's a connection piece between horse and rider. But I think it's really cool what you just named, that your horse might be not strong enough, or they might just be early on the balance beam. So they might just be really trying to establish their balance.
Yes, absolutely. If you took a person that was walking along and they wanted to catch their balance, they went to put their hands over to the side, and you went and sort of like put their hands down, like they would brace against you. They'd be upset, or they'd want to stop doing the exercise.
Yes. Okay, cool. I love this. Great start.
I love it.
Okay, why don't you pick the next one?
Okay. Is this a question for me or for you or for both of us?
It's a question for you.
Okay, so I'm picking a question for me. This is a long one. Thank you, Carly, for this
Thanks,
question.
Carly.
I have a very playful but very mouthy young gelding. I use a lot of the tips from the pushy horse video, creating space, holding the halter when leading, etc. But I want to satiate his sense of playfulness as much as I can. And now we get to the two-part question. 1, do you have exercises for play that you like to use with a horse that tends to push into space? And 2, how do you think about using treats in play training with this type of horse? He can get more pushy when treats are involved, but he is super food motivated.
Cool. Good questions.
Wow, that is a good question. So, whenever I get this question, I try to picture the horse in my head a little bit. So we've got a young gelding who's sort of playful. And usually when I get a horse like this, I'm thinking they're playful, they're confident, they're wanting to like push on you, nibble on things, knock stuff off, that kind of stuff. So the first part, do you have exercises for play that you like to use with a horse that tends to push into space? So yes, the answer is yes. And the first thing is, am I thinking like we're in a round pen and we're doing this on the ground, or are we out riding in an arena and on the trail and exploring the world? I think the first thing is that with this kind of horse is their mind tends to be a little bit busier.
Yes.
And it's like we're thinking, can I give this horse something to do before they find something to do?
Oh, cool.
And not only can I give them something to do, but can I give them something to do that they might even enjoy doing? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So they're wanting to go out and explore the world. So I say, well, let's go out and explore the world. And they're wanting to push something, and I'm saying, instead of pushing this thing, I look ahead and I go, why don't we push that thing? Do you see what I mean? So
Yes.
instead of going and pushing my coffee cup over, I look out and I see maybe a barrel, and I say, let's go see if we can push that barrel. Or
Cool.
you just came back from Alberta,
Yeah.
and it's like, instead of pushing the coffee, let's go push a
cows.
cow.
Yeah.
Right? Let's push them around. Let's give
Yeah.
this a sense of purpose. Let's give my horse
Yes.
something to do.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then let's see. The second part is about using treats in play and training with this type of horse. I think if you had good enough timing and you were really experienced, that you could use treats like right from the beginning. My tendency is that the easiest way to set it up for yourself and for the horse is that if you're going to use treats with this kind of horse, don't have the treat come from you. For some horses, that gets to be like they understand it so quickly and they almost start to push on that, so you can challenge them more. And the way you could do that is you could, for example, you could put a bit of carrot under a bucket.
Yeah.
So they have to knock the bucket over to get the carrot.
Cool.
Right? Or they got to put their head lower, or they got to put their head higher. And if your horse is too motivated about a carrot or something that's sort of calorie rich or sugar rich, you could do something like use hay or grass to kind of temper that a little bit.
What about I know that this is something in positive reinforcement training where you reward the head placement when you're rewarding as well. And I really use that a lot with my 2 horses, because if they get rewarded when they're in your space, and my mare picked up on it super fast, and she's like this horse too. She's very busy minded. She's very and she's quite pushy as well. But one of the things, she picked up on it because she's so motivated and because she's so smart. And I think a lot of horses that exhibit that behavior are both of those things. She picked up on head placement super fast. And so she's very polite when taking treats, but she's also very motivated. Could you explain that concept a little bit?
So the first thing is to really try to set it up with when you're using food and the amount of food you're using, that they don't have a feeling of desperation about the food, right? So one thing that you could do is you could give them a whole bunch of, like, right after they had a whole bunch of grain and they're feeling a little satiated, you could then go out and use some hay.
Cool.
Rather than using grain right at feeding time when they're like desperate for it. So you don't want them to have a feeling of like desperation for this food. You want it to be like just a nice, smooth level, right? The second thing is that when a horse learns to come to your hand or your pocket for food, they've been rewarded for that at some point. Like horses that we're describing here are not stupid horses. They're not asking stupid questions. They're asking a question that has like worked for them at some point. So if the only time that you give your horse food is when their poll is the height of their withers, they're facing straight, and they're not busy with their mouth, they're a little relaxed, they're going to start doing more of that.
Cool.
Whereas the horse pushes into your space, they come to your hand, they knock you over, you give them a treat for that, they're going to do more of that.
Cool. I love that. All right, Samantha. Her question is, my kid's pony is 12 hands, and before I got him, he was in a herd with 30 horses with round bale fed. So used to having to hold his own against horses. I think his fight or flight is a bit more fight. My question is how to go about curbing it. When he is anxious or nervous about something, for example, fly spray or wormer, he either becomes a bulldozer or will turn his butt towards it. As soon as you take away the thing that is making him nervous, he goes back to being a dream pony in an instant. But the fight instinct is not a behavior I want around young kids. Thanks, Samantha, for that question.
Well, the first thing that personally I would avoid doing is getting them into a situation where they feel like they have to fight or flight. You know, that's not a thing I want to confront head on and say, like, let's get my horse where they're in a fighting mood and then try and fix it. You know, so, but the opposite of to say, okay, my horse is scared of fly spray, I'm just going to never fly spray them. I also don't want that. The question is, like, how do we bridge that gap? I can either say I use fly spray and they're going to fight, or I can not use it and they're fine. And the answer is in these tiny improvements, which we've talked about.
1% better every day.
1% better every day, exactly. So what's 1% better? You know, could I just have the fly spray bottle around the horse without spraying it? Right? Maybe I could rub them with it, and then they can just be relaxed. Maybe that's all I do on day 1. Maybe day 2 is 10 feet away from them, spraying in a direction away from them. I can spray 3 or 4 times. You know, and as you get more experience with this sort of technique, you get a feeling of when you can push and when you can back off without overwhelming your horse to where they feel like they've got to go into this fight or flight.
When you do that, when you break things down like that, what are you doing there? Because there's a message that you're sending to the horse subconsciously or subliminally, right? When you break down those little steps.
There's a lot, depending on how you're kind of looking at it, there's a lot of things that's happening. One is you're making it easier for them to understand, to go through these steps in a smaller way, so they're actually understanding it better. If there's any physical component, you're allowing them a chance to build their balance or get straighter or build their muscle or the muscle memory. I would say that the biggest way that it helps, though, and we saw this a little bit, we were messing around with some positive reinforcement training last night at dinner, is that when a horse feels like they can't find the answer, is that they start to want to stop trying. Most horses, you know, they either want to give up, or they get frustrated, or they want to fight, or they just want to leave. And it's the same with people. Like, very few people can be consistently asked a question and not understand the answer and keep trying to find the answer. You know, like, most people are going to want to give up, which is understandable. You know, which is why it's so impressive that when people work on problems that seemingly have no answer, and they work on it for months or years of their life, trying to find the answer, like a math problem, for example. There's like some theorem that nobody's ever found the answer to, and somebody works their whole life on, and they don't even know if there's an answer to this question, and they keep just like, you know what I mean? But most horses and most people do not have the capacity for that, and it is something that we can help the horses get better at. And the way we do it is by constantly making them feel like they're successful. And then at some point, as they get better at it, you're going to be in a situation with your horse where you can't break it down. Like, let's say you're out on a trail ride and you've got some cows, and you've got to like get this cow, or you got to get home, or the thunder and lightning's coming in, and it's like you just something has to happen. You've got to cross a creek, and the horse is like, they're feeling like, for them, you can't break it down into 1%. Like, they got to do it. If 99% of the time, or 9 times out of 10, or whatever the ratio is, you have broken it down and you've shown them the way, they start to develop a confidence in you that there is an answer, and that if they stick with it, they can find the answer. And then when you do get into that little bit of trouble, you're coming to a jump, you're coming to a creek, you're coming to a cow, and you say, okay, now today it's like, I've set you up, now we got to try something a little harder, and we got to do a 10% or 20% improvement. They're going to keep searching. They're going to try to figure it out with you.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like those moments are a bigger withdrawal from the relationship bank.
Yes,
and so,
exactly.
And you've
Great way
deposited
to put it.
so many.
Exactly.
You know, you've done such a thoughtful. You've made such a thoughtful effort to deposit more. That when that horse, when you go, okay, I got to make a big deposit. Like, I got to make big withdrawal today, and I think you have the credit. You know what I mean, with them to do that.
Great way to put it.
You know, saddle fit is something we talk about all the time. But even still, maybe we don't fully grasp just how important it is. Research shows that the wrong saddle fit can restrict a horse's movement, create tension, and over time even lead to injury. For years, I've tried to find that perfect saddle, something that would help my mare relax and stay sound. But after so many tries, I started to question if it was even possible. Horses' bodies change. Humans' bodies change. Maybe when it comes to saddles, good enough is all any of us can hope for. Then a friend introduced me to Schleese. I'll be honest, I was hesitant. I'd been let down before, and a saddle is a big investment. But they offered something I hadn't seen, an 80-point professional saddle fit evaluation for both English and Western saddles. And when they fitted my saddle, everything felt different. Their saddles offer an orthopedic fit and are infinitely adjustable for both horse and rider. So you never have to worry about having a saddle that doesn't fit 6 months later, or having different saddles for different horses. There's a few other Schleese features that have been a game changer for us too. The seat pad adjustments are a huge help, letting me easily add or change pads for a longer multi-day ride versus an arena ride. I love the stirrup placement adjustment, especially as an English rider riding Western, and I really appreciate how lightweight these saddles are. Their modern, light design makes all the difference on this long road trip with so many stops. Right from that first ride, my horse lady, she moved like she'd been waiting for this. In that moment, I understood what I'd been searching for all along. A saddle that didn't just fit, but empowered us to grow together. If you're ready to take that next step on your saddle fitting journey, book your free consultation with Schleese today. Go to schleese.com/bookconsult Noel Floyd, or visit schleese.com to learn more. That's schleese.com.
This is another question about my sensitive mare. How do I know if the discipline I've chosen is even correct? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I ride hunters, and I honestly think she wants to be a Western pleasure horse. My trainer laughs, but I'm quite serious about it. I don't think she loves having all the contact that there typically is in the English disciplines. How would I handle this?
Oh, cool question.
That's a super interesting question.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I do, I guess.
Because I just feel like you've been exploring different disciplines.
Yeah, it's funny. So first of all, for who asked that question, I totally understand. I totally relate to it because I've actually been doing the same thing with my mare. And I do think horses have preferences for activities. I do. And my mare's totally
agree with you.
Yeah, my mare has totally taught me that. I have to really manage how much I ask her to do work in the arena. She's super busy-minded. And so she's really asked me to up my game when I think about her engagement in what I'm asking. and her mental health. And I actually think some horses just advocate for their mental health more. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, no, I don't want to do the same thing 6 days a week. Some horses are okay with that. Just like some people are really okay doing the same job every day, 9 to 5, or they're cool being a night manager. Like they might actually really enjoy the repetition of it. I think horses are as individual as we are.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So it sounds like, I don't know, to whomever asked that question, I would say like, as a fellow horse owner, and like I would say, and a fellow mare owner is like, or steward, or however you guys want to, like however you see it, like I would say listen to your gut, and like regardless of whether people laugh at you, I'd say like go with how it feels. If you go and try.
The go and try is a big part of it, because I think most people get into horses because they like horses and they go to whatever their local barn or local place is. And if maybe, you know, they're a 12-year-old kid and they get into horses, they don't know about all the different horse disciplines: hunters, jumpers, reining, cutting, mounted archery, mounted shooting, polo, endurance, competitive trail, liberty. They don't know about these things, right? They just go to the local barn and they do what the local barn does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They get into eventing because their local barn is an eventing barn.
Yeah.
They get in, you know, they live in Alberta, they get into ranch work because that's what their local barn does.
Yeah. I think it's really happening a lot more. And like for everyone who's listening, if you are curious about another discipline or another style of riding, I wholeheartedly believe that will make you a better horse person, horseman, horsewoman. I think this, and I love this idea that great horsemanship is like broken down into, you know, different components. I think Pat Pirelli breaks down it like finesse, online, liberty, and freestyle. And if you come from a particular part of the horse world, you might have been told the message is, you know, you want to be really good at one thing, which to me is like finesse. You want to be excellent in one discipline. But I think there's lots of ways to being a great horseman or horsewoman. And that includes being like curious and exploring. And your horse might be literally inviting you to do that. Okay, next question. Suzanne, my heart horse is a lovely mare who is extremely animated and opinionated. Oh girl, Suzanne, I hear you. I'd love to help her be more patient. Oh wow, it's like I wrote this question. She often paused when waiting for feed or when standing in cross ties, briefly to be groomed, tacked up, or bathed. I've tried all of the positive reinforcement techniques I can come up with to no avail. She loves to work, she loves to eat, and she doesn't hesitate to let me know she's ready to get to it. Any ideas how we might pass this? We might get past this. Her unique and highly communicative personality makes her a delightful partner. She's about 15. I recently learned that she has an Amish background. I've had her for 4 years, and this quirk has always been our challenge. Thank you, and a huge fan.
So is this something that you've been dealing with a little bit with yours? So
I want to know your answer, because patience, mentoring patience, both in myself and in my mare, that's something I don't think I've figured out as much yet. I think it's slowly, I'm slowly seeing a shift, and I'm slowly seeing her develop more patience. And I think I could do a better job of mentoring that patience by also improving my patience practice. But I really want to hear your answer, because I like totally relate to this question from Suzanne.
So when I've got a horse that I feel is busy-minded and impatient and pawing, I really try as much as possible to not tell them to stand still and do nothing. I try to give them something to do. Now, it's not always possible, but for every one time I say, okay, now today's a day where you got to stand still, or today's a moment or a time where you got to stand still, I try to constantly set up situations where I'm giving them something to do. And now here's like the trickiest part about the whole thing, that I found it very difficult to teach somebody the timing on this. Not impossible, but difficult. You got to really kind of get invested and watch this happen a few times. Is I will give this horse something to do. So let's say I've got the horse that is leaping around a little bit or pawing or constantly pushing against the fence, and I've got them in the round pen, and I'm asking them to leg yield down the rail away from me. So I've asked them to do this. They're busy-footed, they're kind of moving around, and they're leg yielding down the fence. As I'm asking them to leg yield down the fence, there will come a time at some point, it could be within a couple of minutes, within a couple of days, but at some point, the horse will go, and they will offer, and sometimes it's just for like like less than a second. Like they'll sort of start to come down a little bit. And in that moment, I go, great. Like and in essence, I'm rewarding them for not doing what I asked them to do. Like I'm asking them to leg yield.
Yeah.
And they're going, I want to just stand and relax.
So you reward that.
And I reward that.
Explain like the science, the training aspect of that, because what are you, you're rewarding?
I'm rewarding the horse wanting to relax and be quieter and be still. And the horse is saying, I'm ready. I'm offering a moment where my mind is getting stiller or quieter and my body's relaxing. And I go, great. Like that's more important than what I was asking for. Let's just take that. And then they maybe come down, and some horses might come down for a few minutes. Some horses might just come down for a second. And then when they're ready to move again, I go, okay, let's go back to working on this leg yielding or this circle. And it's the same thing when I'm riding. I'm riding a horse like that. I'm asking them to trot around, and then they offer a moment to come to the walk and lengthen their neck and stretch. And even though I've asked them to be trotting, I go, great, I'd rather take that.
It actually reminds me of a day that I was at your place in Florida, and you were riding a horse for the first time. And I thought this was so cool. You might not even remember this. You were riding a horse you had never ridden before. It was a horse that just arrived for training. And you explained to me, I was watching you hack around this gelding in the field. And you said, when I first get on a horse that I do not know, they get to do not whatever they want, but they can walk, trot, canter, change leads, whatever, change directions. And I kind of go with it. You're like, what I'm trying to do is just like make them feel like they have, like help them feel like they have a voice. And I thought that was remarkable, because no one ever says, okay, what should you do when you first, like maybe they do. I've not seen a lot out there on like, okay, what do you do when you first get on a horse that you do not know, right? And you were like, I'm just letting this guy know that he's totally okay. That like, I'm here to, I'm just here to like get to know him. And you were literally, he would like pick up the canter and you were relaxed and he'd canter, and then he'd break into the trot and you'd be trotting for a little bit. You'd let him walk. You'd stretch his neck out. You'd let him go out on a long line. And I thought that was, and it reminds me kind of the same mentality here of just like, to me, it feels like what you're mentoring between the two of you is the feeling that there's like a feedback loop.
So there's a nice expression, which I've heard in different ways, but it is first you go with the horse, then the horse goes with you, and then you go together. Have you heard that before?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's nice,
I
right?
love it.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. Next question.
Am I reading this one?
Yeah.
What suggestions do you have for maintaining a horse's fitness, top line, and muscles when they are rehabbing while also keeping their mind engaged? That's a tough one, because there's a lot of exercises that you can give people to work on those things. But I really feel like no matter what exercise I would recommend, there's a way to do that exercise well and a way to do that exercise that does not work on those things. I've heard people say, I want to work on my horse's muscling, so I'm going to canter them uphill.
Yeah.
Uphills, like you live in the mountains, you canter them uphill. But I think you can canter a horse uphill, downhill. Like the horse is on the forehand.
Totally.
As you canter uphill. And you can also canter downhill with an uphill balance.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
So for me, when I hear that question, the first thing that I think is to be watching videos, talking to professionals, reading books on how a horse moves and conformation and biomechanics, to really have a really good eye for how you want your horse to move, to be able to like visualize it, or watch 10 horses, like a dressage judge that can see the nuances in how a horse moves. It comes back to our first question when you were talking about our horses, the shape of how we want their neck and head to be, is that's the easiest thing to see in a horse, is the shape of their neck. But the much more difficult, more nuanced thing to see is how their back and hindquarters move. That takes a lot of training. Seeing if the horse is on the bit in quotation marks or not, if they're on the vertical or not, in front or behind, that takes almost no training. You can point that out to somebody in 10 seconds. But seeing how their back moves, seeing the suppleness, seeing the engagement in the hindquarters, that takes a little bit of an eye.
And I think each horse's, their point of balance, I've really learned this in some of the training I've done recently, is one, each horse's individual point of balance, so they're even in a place to develop their top line and actually build fitness and strength, is unique to each horse. So you actually, I think I've learned a lot by not only working with my horses on the ground, but watching them in video.
Yeah.
So that when I understand each of their individual points of balance, then that's what I'm trying to achieve in the saddle. And that was a total game changer for me, because I had never been taught how to find my horse's point of balance and natural self-carriage, which is a product of balance, on the ground. And now it completely changed, because I've been guilty of putting a horse in a frame that wasn't natural, wasn't complementary to their point of balance.
Yeah.
So they cannot develop a top line there.
Yeah. I think to summarize it, the answer for the person is to really work on their sort of the idea and their biomechanics, because almost any exercise you can work on those things, and almost any exercise you can make those things worse. If they're specifically wanting help with their horse, right now, my recommendation is to have if you haven't developed that eye yourself, to get in a lesson with a trainer that has a good eye. Personally myself, I take dressage lessons every week down in Ocala. I think your eye can always get better. I mean, I've been doing this my whole life, and I still feel like every year I have little breakthroughs about what I'm looking for, what balance I want my horse in, and I find it always helpful to be watching more videos, talking to more people, coming to the Equine Affaire. It's just, you can always develop a better eye.
And I'd say also watch yourself, filming yourself, even though guys, I hear you, I also have a really hard time watching myself ride or do stuff, because I'm very critical of myself. But I think if you can almost look at yourself objectively and just think that you're looking at somebody else, almost, that's what I tend to do. I think it's really helpful, even if you're watching yourself, but you're watching your horse and you're understanding how you're communicating. I think that's it's a hard one. It was a hard one for me, but I think it's extremely helpful. I mean, all the top athletes, you included, that I've witnessed and worked with over the years, they all spend time every week, some of them every day leading up to a championship, watching themselves on video. Okay, next question. We do not have a name. Yes, trailer problem. I can self-load my horse and she will stand, but when I put the bar behind before putting the ramp up, she panics and goes down and reverses out under the bar, taking hair off her wither and spine. Yikes.
Sounds like she goes under the bar? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
She says, I put the bar behind her before putting the ramp up, but she panics and goes down and reverses out under the bar, taking hair off her wither and spine.
I mean, there's training things you could do for that.
Yeah.
There's quite a few things you could do, but the number one thing I would be thinking is get a lower bar or even find a way to get the ramp up first and the bar up second, because that's super. There's training is one thing, but then there's just dangerous. And if your horse is getting under that bar, that's not good.
And I think if it's contorting its body in a way that it feels like it needs to do that to stay safe. One thing I'll say to the person who asked this, actually my gelding does this. He flies back when he's in a straight load, and we have started using it's called a butt belt, not a butt bar, because
it sags a little bit under their bum.
Sags, and he actually finds it's been supportive for him, because the butt bar, he's learned in previous experience to sort of bang up against, and he's a big 16 3-hand Andalusian. He's really strong, and he'll bang up against the bar, and that's how I guess he's felt like he needs to do that with a lot of force, and he really panics. It looks like it's kind of claustrophobia. Yeah. The butt belt actually kind of gives to him a little bit, and it feels like it almost reassures him that he's not contained within four walls, even though he kind of is. So I think I might even recommend this person just Evan switch out the butt bar with a butt belt, which is something you can get at a lot of horse trailer places.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the behavior.
So from the training perspective, one of probably three things that's causing that to happen. One is it hears something behind them. Two is it sees something behind them. And three is it feels something behind them. So it hears a rattle, or it feels the butt bar, or it sees out of the corner of the eye the butt bar coming up. So then, let's assume the horse is standing quietly. Well, let's back up even further. If your horse gets on the trailer and can't stand quietly, without you doing up the butt bar at all, like that's what you need to be working on. Like don't even try to put the butt bar up. Like your horse got to be able to stand quietly in the trailer, and then you take a deep breath and put the butt bar up. So let's say we're assuming now your horse can stand quietly, and then the butt bar causes the horse to panic. So then what I would do is I would figure out which one of those three things it was, or a combination, and I would go away from the trailer back to the round pen, and I would work on having the horse get used to noise or sight or
recreate
touch.
the sound or the
behind
trigger.
them. Yeah, and
Genius.
then I would get to the point where I could stand almost directly behind them, take my hand and just go like this, like da da, and the horse can take a step forward. So once I've gotten them used to those things, and the horse can take a step forward from pressure behind them, then I go back to the trailer, and then I stand behind them. I don't try to put the butt bar up, which is going to cause them to panic, and I see if on their bum I can go like this, and with one of their 4 feet, they can take a step forward quietly. Then I start to have these 1% improvements. So then what I might do is I might give the, without raising the butt bar, I might give it a little wiggle. So the horse hears like a little shake. And then I go, dun, dun, 1 step forward. And then maybe I bring it up so the horse can see it out of the corner of their eye. And then I put it back down. And I go, dun. So you're trying to have all these little 1% improvements. What I would definitely not try to do is, just try to close that butt bar up and then let them run into it. Like, they're just going to cause panic every time.
This is going back to breaking it down into manageable bite-sized pieces, recreating the environment as best you can outside of the trailer or wherever the trigger is taking place, because you're then recreating like a completely new neural pathway.
Exactly.
Amazing.
All right. This is from Jessica. How do I better keep my horse's focus and connection with me in the saddle and on the ground, especially when in new places? There's 2 parts here. One is the focus in general, and then one is the focus in new places. Let's assume, we'll come back to this in a sec, but let's assume we have focus at home, but we don't have focus in new places. Then it's going back to the 1% improvements. Can I go a little bit away from home and then back? Can I go a little further away from home? So like maybe on a trail ride. The other thing is to kind of recreate going to places that, so let's say I've got to put my horse on a trailer and go somewhere. Recreate places that feel more like home. So I'm not going to go from my quiet, 5-acre, 3-stall barn at home and go straight to a showgrounds with 150 horses and loudspeakers and a carnival-like atmosphere. I'm going to go down the road to my friend's or neighbor's place that has a similar setting to mine and work with my horse there. Then after doing that a few times, I'm going to go to like a boarding barn that's got 20 horses. When they're not teaching lessons, I'm going to work with my horse in their arena. Then I'm going to go back to that same place when they are teaching just one lesson. I'm going to work around at the other end of the ring. And then I'm going to go back when there's a group lesson. Then I'm going to go to another place that has cross-country schooling, but I'm going to go with a friend. And it's just going to be the 2 of us wandering around the cross-country course. So I'm trying to bridge the gap between what they can do and what they can't do. Now, how do I better keep my horse's focus and connection with me? Let's say they're having trouble at home. Then it comes back to me to really trying to find, right from the beginning, if we're starting from the beginning, just 1 or 2 things that the horse really truly understands. And they're not just doing it out of obedience or pressure or discipline, but they really understand it. Like they look at me with that soft eye and they go, I understand this question, I understand this communication, this vocabulary, and I can do that thing. So that starting point might be, or it would be a very simple starting point. It could be that when I walk up to my horse and I extend my arm, I can wait there like that until they touch my hand, and then I back up. And they can do that with a soft eye reliably and consistently. A more advanced exercise might be that I can go up to that distance, and after they touch my arm, I take a break, and then I ask them to back up 2 steps. And when they back up, they don't do it with a crazy eye. They don't do it with a high head carriage. They do it with a low head, a soft eye, and with a smooth understanding of what I'm asking them to do. There's lots of things that we talk about with connection and partnership, and one of the most important things for me with all that is that they understand you.
I remember you really reinforcing, when you're trying something new, you're really reinforcing the try by also going back to things that you're changing it up, and you're going back to something that they know, right? And you're rewarding the focus so that you start. And it's really cool, guys, if you've ever done clicker training with each other, do it with each other, because you then really understand how the horse feels. Because if you don't know what you're being clicker trained for, then it's exactly watching Megan do this with you at dinner last night was so cool, because you can really you can witness and observe in the human how frustrated they are if they don't understand what you're asking. And so coming back always to the fundamentals of rewarding the try. If you're trying something new, try something new, reward even the smallest of improvements or focus, and then go back to something that they know so that they feel really good about themselves, you know? And you feel good. Like the rider feels good too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Tick, as always, I learned so much when we sit down and talk, and I'm just so grateful to do this No Stupid Questions bonus episode with you.
Thank you very much. It was really fun.